All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Technical Tuesdays. I'm your host, Maria. Today, we're going to be talking about something called marrying your territory. And I wanted to start off by sharing a quick paragraph from something called the Legacy Success Manual. So if you've been here more than a couple days, you've probably had this emailed to you from Nicole. So if you search your email and quotes Legacy Success Manual, it should pop up. If not, let me know. We can get this to you. This is a super, super helpful document that was written by Peter Ferre, who started the Legacy Group, the group of agency owners that included Van and many others. And it is just the roadmap to success in this business. So I wanted to share a quick paragraph about a territory recommendation, and then we'll get into talking about what it means to marry your territory. So make sure I'm actually sharing my screen this time, because one time I thought I was sharing my screen and I really wasn't, but can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Sweet. All right, guys. So I'm just going to read this one quick paragraph here. So it says, for a territory, it is recommended that you work a small town. For example, 3,000 to 15,000 people. That is between 15 and 45 minutes away from your home. A small town allows you to get plugged in quicker with the people and connect better with names and easier to get referrals. The drive is simply to create a separation between your home and your territory in order to help you stay on a rigid schedule and eliminate unnecessary distractions at such a critical time in your career. If you work the business market, which all of us do, this is a perfect size town to help you learn the process of calling on small businesses. This town can probably last you at least 6 months to a year in the business and will always be a great place to return every few years to catch new people, sell old clients new products, put new people you bring onto your team, or just a place to go if you need to sell a lot of insurance in a small amount of time, for example, to hit goals, incentives, etc., so on and so forth. So I'm going to pause right there, you guys. That is the ideal territory. It's going to be a small town, not a major metropolis like all of Nashville, for example. And there's a reason for that. So Peter Ferre kind of knows what he's doing in this business. So he started, for those of you who don't, I'm not going to get into the Legacy Group too much, but all the agency owners that you know and hear about on the Train More conference call, Justin Ellingson, Andy Santos, Kyle Van, they all came from Peter. So safe to say he kind of knows what he's talking about. So that's what we try to put you guys in, a turf that's not incredibly huge and that's not super, super close to home in most cases, because we don't want you going home for lunch and then just taking a long nap and forgetting to go back to work or whatever. So I want to talk about marrying your territory. So I'm going to encourage participation on this. So before I call on anybody, does anybody know, or what do you guys think I mean when I say marry your territory?
So pretty much just because I'm starting over, and that's kind of the town that I have started in. It's much smaller. And I really forced myself to go to the next business on the right. And it's made a huge difference in referrals for me.
Huge.
Because I did not, where I started in Burlington was bigger than that, I'm pretty sure. But in Carolina, but I really tried to do it right this time, and it is making a difference. So.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for that perspective, Renee. So guys, for those of you who don't know, Renee worked with us in North Carolina for about a year, and she just recently moved back home to Missouri. And the cool thing about this career is you can do it anywhere in any town. And now Renee is kind of getting a fresh start, a new perspective, and really seeing how marrying her territory and working a small town like Peter recommends is working out pretty well for her. So when I say marry your territory, I kind of mean it almost like you would think about your spouse or something, know it really well, be dedicated to it. Don't up and leave it for something else more attractive just because you had a couple bad days, right? So just kind of stick and stay with your turf. It's gonna work out, I promise. But just like a marriage, it takes work sometimes. It's not gonna be perfect all the time. So I'll just ask one more question before we jump in. Anybody can answer this. why might that, what we're talking about, sticking to a turf, be really important for the type of sales that we do? Going B2B like we do, why would that be important?
We don't have the luxury of a duck. We've got to introduce ourselves. We've got to inject ourselves into community, charity work, being friends with people on Facebook. I mean, you can build your own network really quickly. And yeah, we can't market the same way as advertisements on TV. So we've got to make connections with folks, and then they will connect us with other people.
Boom,
Work
yeah,
so hard that you no longer have to introduce yourself.
there you go. I like that. Work so hard you no longer have to introduce yourself. There we go. So yeah, Zach's exactly right. It's all about connection. Okay, guys. It is so important and imperative for people to like us and trust us. Otherwise, quite frankly, they won't give us their bank account information. When we close a sale, people are trusting us enough to give us their routing and account number. And they're not going to do that if they think we're just some traveling snake oil salesman who shows up, some fly-by-night company with something too good to be true, and then they never see us again, right? If we fail to put down roots in our turf, that's how we may be perceived. You know, hopefully not. And now, to be clear, just a quick disclaimer, I am not saying that you need to be born and raised and know everybody in your territory in order to do well there. Not at all, okay? I had never even heard of Salem, Virginia until I moved there 5 months before I started working here, and I do okay. And taking that to an even more extreme level, a lot of people do what's called a travel training work, where on those, like last week where we had those conference calls, you're hearing all these people putting up crazy numbers, 15, 20, 30,000. And they're working in some little random town with little to no names built up, no momentum. And their whole job is to get that names list going, get that momentum started. And that would not be possible for them to put up those numbers in such a short period of time in such a small town without doing some prior research on the territory and working hard to become part of the community really quick. All right. But on the flip side, if you were born and raised in or near your territory, kind of like Casey has been, then we definitely do have an expectation of you that you're gonna at least know the basics of your town, like who the big names are, the movers and shakers, and all the basic things like the names of the schools and the local hospitals. Again, your turf is probably going to be 15 to 45 minutes from your house. So chances are you've at least heard of some of the local hospitals, hopefully, right? You're not really living under a rock that much, right? So in order to help you guys know, like, what kind of research do I need to do? What do I need to look up to really marry my turf and get to know this stuff? I'm going to share with you guys something called the New Territory Worksheet. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys, but this is something that I share with people on my team after we do our sales conversation review, with the expectation that they complete it before Sales Academy. Of course, it's never too late. If you haven't done it yet, you can always do it later. And if you guys don't have this, ask your trainer, ask me, search the Legacy Success Manual in your email. It's on page 36. Most of the information on this can be found in a 5-minute Wikipedia search. The information on here is important because it shows the people of the town that you care. You're not just here to sell them something. And some parts of it are just practical. You know, knowing the area code, the zip codes, that helps you fill out your application faster and makes you look more professional. So I'll give you guys an example. So Roanoke area has like 6 or 7 different zip codes, part of the way we break up our turf to make it a more manageable section for one agent. But if someone tells me, they're like, oh, we live in Vinton, I'm like, okay, cool. So 24179 is your zip code. Salem 24153, you know, whatever the case may be. And then they're like, oh, cool. She knows what she's talking about, right? Just something as simple as that makes us look more professional. So a couple things in here, guys. Obviously, the name of the town, the county, zip code, area code, population. Like we talked about, you're probably going to be assigned a turf that's between 3,000 and 15,000. And if you're looking on the CRM, that should be about, 900 to 2,000 businesses, B2B prospects in there. So right around 1,000 is typically going to be average. Knowing the mayor, right? That's a cool thing. I've met the mayor of Salem twice. She kind of knows who I am. She has my business card. Her son's a client. Like, that's pretty cool. That makes it seem like I'm, kind of part of the community. Now I'm going to ask a question here. Why do you guys think it might be important to know the names of local schools or colleges? Let's see, who hasn't said something yet, you guys? I don't want this to be just me talking.
Kids, right?
Yeah, they're kids,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, people love talking about their kids. And if you're talking about college sports, I mean, gosh, here in the South, college ball is like an organized religion. If you get people to talk about things they love, they're going to like you. People love talking about their kids, their favorite team. Near me, it's Virginia Tech. Everybody's all about Virginia Tech. And if they're not, then they really don't like Virginia Tech. And they'll talk about that too. And that's okay. Just stuff like that. How was your kid's game last night and stuff like that. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, it's really important to know local hospitals. Okay. In some turfs, there's not a decent hospital, you guys. So if anyone needs emergency treatment for something like a heart attack, a stroke, an accident, something major, they might need to drive pretty far, which could mean, delays, life-threatening delays in some cases, or they'd have to pay a ton for their ambulance. I've met people in my town, and we have a hospital right here, and many people, like 3 or 5 people, have said they've been having a stroke, like actively having a stroke, and they chose to drive themselves instead of calling an ambulance because they just couldn't afford it, right? Can you see how for someone like that, our ambulance and air ambulance benefits would give them a huge peace of mind? And then talking about cancer, as we know, where you get treated matters. Local hospitals don't always have the best cancer specialists, but oftentimes that's just all someone can afford, or the only place that's in network with their insurance, especially if they're trying to still work a little bit during their treatment, or if they're really not feeling good and they need to rest at home in between. It can be really financially impossible for someone to have the option to travel across state lines to a really good cancer center. Whenever you get a cancer story, when you're talking to someone in your demo, ask where their person got treated. So the person they were, their cancer story, whoever it was, where did they get treated? Were they treated locally, or did they go to Duke? Did they go to UVA? Did they go to the Mayo Clinic, MD Anderson, wherever it was? And you'll pretty soon find out the local's opinion of the nearby hospital and where they'd rather go for treatment. I've worked in some territories where they don't like the local hospital. There's one territory in particular, they said that's where people go to die. Like, we don't go to that hospital unless we're not planning on coming out. So they want to go farther away. So can you see how our lodging and transportation benefits would really help them out, right, on our cancer plan? Why is it important to know major employers? That's another thing listed on the new territory worksheet. There's a couple reasons. So first off, you want to get referred in there, right? I'll give you guys a couple examples. Like in Rocky Mount, there's this big manufacturer called Ply Gym. You can't just walk in there. You probably need to get referred in. Here in Salem, there's something called Medico. Wells Fargo is another big employer here in Salem. US Foods, you can't just walk into those businesses here, guys. They employ hundreds and hundreds of people. They have a system of gatekeepers. Doesn't mean I don't try to walk in, but it definitely helps to have a referral. And those are usually the businesses where everyone you demo, it seems like their spouse works there. Everybody I demo, their spouse works at Wells Fargo or Carillion or Lewis Gale or US Foods. It's just everybody, right? Those are the big employers in my territory. And so you can say every single time someone's spouse works at one of those businesses, awesome, who would I talk to over there about this? And eventually, hopefully somebody knows the HR lady or whatever. And also another thing that's important to know about the major employers is kind of their schedule, how many shifts they have, things like that. If it's a factory with 3 shifts and they say, oh yeah, my spouse works there. Okay, cool. What shift do they work? And then that's in building rapport. That helps you build rapport. But this is strategic too. Because if you find out someone's spouse works third shift and they go to give you the spousal objection later, then you can kind of be like, hey, listen, I know it's probably really tough to get the two of you together since he works third shift, right? Nodding. And it's like, cool. Well, we can do one of two things. I could try and set an appointment with the two of you together, but it sounds like you guys don't get a whole lot of time together as it is. So, I mean, if I showed you something that totally fits your budget and you believed it was a good fit for your family, that's something you could look at on your own, right? Your spouse trusts your judgment. And then it kind of gives you the pre-approach and the knowledge of when that objection comes up, how you can best handle that. So that's why it's important to know major employers. And then one thing I will also add with the new territory worksheet, another one that's really important is it's really important to get local cancer, heart, and accident stories. So our claims are great, especially if you do have claims in your area. It's even better if people know the people who have had the story. So, you know how at the beginning of the demo, we asked, you know, who's the closest person to you who's ever been affected by any of these? They're way more likely to share. You have to give a story in order to get a story. If you've just mentioned 2 or 3 local stories, and that way they know you are not singling them out. You're asking everybody and everybody's sharing stories. So that's also one of the only parts of your demo where it's okay to talk about yourself. You know, if you say, it sure has affected my family, for example, and then give a couple stories or whatever. But that's really important to help get them to open up. You know, if you're like, hey, I just found out that, you know, so-and-so had this story. I'll give you guys an example. Yesterday, I was working with Brian Boyd in Christiansburg, and we approached a Cora physical therapy place and asked, you know, like, hey, did I happen to catch your office manager in, or is that you? And he said, oh my gosh, our office manager actually passed away last month from a heart attack. I was like, oh my gosh, like what happened? Like, how young was he? He was 51 years old, guys, with a wife and kids. That's a big deal. He was very well known in the community. That's a really big thing to affect a community. And they were very open-minded to hearing about a heart attack plan after that, you know, not to make it into a sales pitch, but just like, oh my gosh, like that's exactly why we're here. You know, and then sharing that story in the next couple of demos, people are like, oh yeah, I heard about that. You know, it lets people know that you care, that you're a part of the community. You're not just here to sell them something for no reason, that this is a need they have. If it's happened to their neighbors and their coworkers, they know it's a real thing and it could happen to them too. Not to use scare tactics or anything, but it's just the reality of the world we live in, you guys. We see the stats page every day on our demo. It's just the reality, right? And knowing the local stories is really easy if you just do a quick Google search, you know, on GoFundMe. You can do GoFundMe, Roanoke, Virginia. You'll find a whole bunch of stuff. It's updated every single day, and you can find some pretty crazy stories. And yeah, after the first day, you'll have more stories just from the field. You know, hey, I was just talking to so-and-so at this place, and they shared that their coworker's been out for a year dealing with cancer or whatever. Just something super simple. They know that business. It's 2 doors down. Chances are they know the person you're talking about too. And guys, just wanted to share a quick little anecdote with that. So one time Casey and I went to Alabama and we did like a little travel trainer with the Santos agency. And before we went, we did this research. We got out the new territory worksheet. It was Coleman, Alabama. I still remember it. It was about a year ago. We did the new territory worksheet. We found out the name of the sheriff, the name of the mayor, the name of the schools, what the town was known for, all of this stuff. And we looked up local GoFundMes. And one of them was a young man named Sean who had just passed away from a motorcycle accident. And we did a group presentation in front of real estate agents, and we shared that story along with a couple others. And the girls all started like tearing up. That was their friend. They went to high school with him. And some of them shared with me the reason they signed up with us was because they were very touched that we bothered to find that stuff out. One guy said, it seemed like you guys were from here because you cared about us and you knew what was going on. You know, me and Casey were there for a week, you guys. We weren't from there. I've never been to Alabama before or since. But just doing this little bit of research and taking that time, that's what sets us apart from the competition who's just there for 5 minutes and leaves. But this stuff works, you guys. That's the reason that people can do travel train wars and be incredibly successful, is just taking a little bit of time to marry your turf, get to know what's going on in the town. And if it's your home turf and you continue to work there and be there, then to kind of foster those relationships with people and continue to stay kind of plugged into town, because pretty much you will be from there if you've worked there for a couple months. So that's pretty much what I've got on that. We've got a couple minutes for questions. If anybody has anything to add, any comments. All right, everybody's either looking for the mute button or we're all good.
I was looking for the mute button. That was just all really great information, Maria. Thanks for sharing all that.
You're welcome, Renee.
Maria, I'm doing my best not to talk, but it's hard to. That information was so awesome. And guys, make no mistake that what Maria said, it's easier to not do that than it is to do that. I mean, doing what she says takes effort, but being successful takes more effort than failing also. So it just, it's either you do the work on the front end or you got to do a whole lot of extra work on the back end with less results. So this stuff absolutely works, and it warms my heart to hear this brought out, because it's just basic stuff. It's worked presented to me 21 years ago when I started in this gig, and it worked then and it works now. So thank you.
Absolutely. If anybody has any questions about any of that, especially if you are on my team, please reach out. I know in Roanoke, we kind of have like multiple agents in, because it is kind of a big city. So, getting to know just local stories from the businesses you work with or have talked to in your area is going to be your best bet. They will still know other cancer stories from across Roanoke. And then those of you who have like Franklin County or Bedford or, Christiansburg, that's its own thing, and they have their own stories too. But yeah, guys, just show people that you care, and take 30 seconds or a minute at the beginning of your demo to genuinely connect with people before you just launch into your approach. And having some of this information already in your mind will really help out with that. I promise it works. So with that, if nobody has any other questions, then we're gonna let you guys get out there and get to it. So looks like we're all good to go. This is gonna be recorded. You should find it on YouTube. So if anybody has any questions, we got you. But yeah, you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and go make some people smile. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.